The village of Sainte-Mère-Église slept under a clouded Normandy sky on June 5, 1944, unaware that the men of the 82nd Airborne Division were already wheels up and heading directly toward it. Among them sat Private John Steele, a paratrooper from F Company, 505 Parachute Infantry Regiment. He had jumped before. He had trained for months. But the truth was simple. Nothing in his life had prepared him for what he was about to drop into. Inside the C-47 aircraft, the air was thick with sweat, exhaust fumes, and fear. The men sat on canvas benches, guns and gear strapped to their bodies, parachutes packed tight. The engines roared so loudly that conversation wasn't even possible. Steele clutched his static line, glancing at the red jump light near the open door. He could feel the temperature change as cold night air blasted into the fuselage. He inhaled once, slow, steady. His heart thumped violently inside his chest. Before takeoff, they had been briefed. Sainte-Mère-Église was vital. The town sat on a crossroads, and whoever controlled it controlled the movement of German reinforcements toward Utah Beach. The 82nd Airborne had to seize it before dawn. The plan was simple on paper. Parachute in around the town, capture it, hold it until the seaborne troops linked up. But the pilots were already struggling with low clouds, intense flak, and chaos. Plans meant nothing when the sky filled with burning aircraft. As the jump door rattled, Steele felt the aircraft suddenly lurch. Tracers sliced upward, ripping holes through the night. Anti-aircraft guns from the German garrison were firing at full speed. The roar of flak disintegrating in midair sounded like metal cracking underwater. The C-47 shook violently as black explosions erupted outside the windows. Men began to panic silently, gripping their static lines tighter, eyes wide with fear. The red light turned green. The jumpmaster shouted, "Go! Go! Go!" Men poured out of the aircraft one after another, swallowed by the blackness. Steele stepped forward, boots pounding on the metal floor. He leapt into the night, the slipstream ripping him out of the door. For a moment he tumbled, weightless, until the parachute snapped open above him with a violent jerk that nearly dislocated his shoulders. Below him, Normandy was on fire. A building in the center of Sainte-Mère-Église was burning, a house hit hours earlier by an accidental flare. The fire cast a haunting orange glow across the village. From the air, it looked like a spotlight shining upward, illuminating Steele and dozens of paratroopers like silhouettes in the sky. The Germans in the town square were wide awake, bucket brigades already fighting the flames. When they looked up, they saw parachutes drifting down directly onto them. What followed was chaos. The Germans opened fire instantly. Paratroopers falling through the glow were hit before they touched the ground. Some landed right in the middle of the firefight. Others were dragged across roofs or crashed into walls. Steele realized he was drifting too low, too fast, and directly into the lit center of the village. He tried pulling his risers to steer, but the wind was too strong. His chute caught air and swung him sideways toward the stone church of Sainte-Mère-Église. He braced for impact but hit the steeple hard, slamming against the roof tiles before his parachute snagged on the church spire. He was thrown forward and then yanked backward as the canopy wrapped around the steeple. The lines twisted and tightened around his body, pinning one arm. He dangled helplessly against the church wall, legs kicking in empty air, his helmet bouncing off the stone. Below him, the battle continued. German soldiers ran across the square shouting orders, firing at falling paratroopers. The firefight echoed off the stone buildings, making it impossible to tell where gunshots were coming from. Steele felt a burning sting in his foot. A stray bullet had grazed him as he dangled above the fight. He tried to cut himself loose with his knife, but his arm was tangled in the lines and he was losing blood. Pain radiated through his leg. He realized instantly that if he made noise, if the Germans noticed him hanging there, he stood no chance. Desperate, he let his body go limp and pretended to be dead. Minutes stretched into hours. The night air chilled his skin, and the smell of smoke drifted from the burning house. Sometimes the flames flickered high enough to light the church facade, exposing him for a few terrifying seconds. A wounded American lay on the ground below him, groaning softly until a German soldier noticed and dragged him away at gunpoint. Steele couldn't look down. He couldn't move. He could only listen. German troops marched in and out of the church beneath him, their boots clapping against the cobblestones. At one point, a pair of them stood directly under him, talking casually about the paratroopers they had scattered. To Steele, every second felt like an eternity. The church bell hung inches from his shoulder. If he breathed too loudly, if he twitched, if a gust of wind made the parachute rustle, he was finished. As the hours passed, the night quieted. The glow of the fire faded. The screams and gunshots drifted away into the distance. But Steele remained awake, trapped, bleeding, and barely conscious. His harness dug into his chest and thighs. His leg throbbed with every heartbeat. He drifted in and out of awareness, clinging to the hope that someone, somewhere, would see him and help. Just before dawn on June 6th, American paratroopers from the 505 began to infiltrate the town from the outskirts. Small squads fought their way through hedgerows and orchards, entering the village street by street. They exchanged fire with German defenders dug into houses and windows. Grenades echoed through alleyways. By sunrise, Sainte-Mère-Église became the first French town liberated on D-Day. 2 paratroopers from Steele's unit spotted him hanging from the church. At first, they thought he was gone, his body slumped, head down, utterly motionless. Then they saw his eyelids flutter. They hurried inside the church, climbed the bell tower, and cut through the tangled parachute lines to lower him gently to the floor. Steele collapsed, barely able to speak. His uniform was torn and soaked with blood. His foot was badly wounded, and deep bruises covered his chest and arms where the harness had dug into him. His first words were faint. "Am I late?" Despite the horror of the night, Steele refused evacuation until he could stand. He rejoined his unit later that day, limping but determined. He fought with the 82nd Airborne through the following days of brutal house-to-house combat. As the Germans launched counterattacks to retake the town, Steele stayed in the fight as long as his injuries allowed before being ordered to rest in a medical station. Sainte-Mère-Église remained in American hands until the link-up with forces coming off Utah Beach. The crossroads held. The 82nd Airborne had completed one of the most important missions of D-Day, and the town became a symbol of airborne sacrifice. For Steele, the experience never left him. The terror of dangling helplessly above enemy troops, the sounds of men he knew fighting and falling below him, and the feeling of being suspended between life and death stayed burned into his memory. After the war, he visited Sainte-Mère-Église several times. Local villagers who had seen him hanging there during the night of the invasion treated him like family. The church later installed a mannequin with a parachute on the steeple to honor his survival, a reminder of the chaos of that night. Steele became a quiet symbol of D-Day. He hadn't fired a shot while stuck on the steeple, but he endured something almost more brutal: absolute vulnerability in the heart of an invasion. His story became known around the world, especially after it was featured in The Longest Day, but the reality was far harsher than the film version. The real night was darker, bloodier, louder, and filled with the constant knowledge that at any second he could be discovered and ended. What made Steele's ordeal so extraordinary wasn't just the danger, but the sheer luck involved. He landed in the one place in the village illuminated by fire, the one place where German soldiers were already concentrated. The chance of landing on the steeple, the exact angle, the exact wind, was almost impossible. Yet it happened, creating an image that would define the chaos of airborne operations. But to understand Steele's experience, you have to understand what the 82nd Airborne was doing that night. The jump wasn't neat or coordinated. Planes were scattered for miles. Paratroopers landed in marshes and drowned. Some hit the ground firing. Others fought entire battles with only a handful of men. The airborne drops on D-Day were some of the most chaotic operations of the entire war. Steele's survival amidst that chaos is one reason his story stands out. He wasn't a general. He didn't lead a heroic charge. He simply survived a situation with no escape, no weapon, no ability to fight back. His role was the most human one imaginable: stay alive. When the invasion ended and the beaches were secure, the world saw D-Day as a sweeping military triumph. But for soldiers like Steele, it wasn't strategy or maps. It was fear, pain, smoke, heat, parachute cords slicing into skin, the sound of bullets hitting stone inches away, and the knowledge that death could come from a single mistake. John Steele survived D-Day, but the night he spent hanging from the church of Sainte-Mère-Église became one of the most unforgettable and haunting tales of the invasion. A moment where the entire war seemed suspended with him, balanced between disaster and triumph. If you enjoyed this deep dive into a soldier's perspective, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And let me know in the comments, what brutal moment from World War II should I cover next?